The gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer, is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce into the record a letter from the Governor of Alabama, the Honorable Robert Bentley, addressed to the Honorable Gina McCarthy of the EPA.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Easton, reductions in ozone levels can be achieved by a variety of methods, including control technologies and control measures. Ozone control strategies generally target nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds, which are the primary contributors to ozone formation at ground levels. Unfortunately, the EPA has not been able to identify how the proposed standards will be met. Despite intensive review of available control technologies, EPA is forced to heavily rely on controls that could not identify or predict literally unknown controls. If the EPA can't even point to controls capable of almost half the emissions reductions needed in the East or all of the reductions required in California to meet these stringent proposed standards, this sounds like a shoot first, ask questions later rulemaking. Should we be imposing this much burden on the American people when the EPA doesn't even know how this rule can be accomplished?
Thank you. The broader question, I think, is the use of the black box, other than it's just a holding mechanism so that you can go through the process and meet the requirements of the Clean Air Act. And they have to approve them and without any backup to it. And I mean, I personally am glad it's there as a tool, but the reality is that the technology may not be developed, it may not be cost effective, and you're looking into the future with promises of some sort of a deposit that you may not be able to withdraw later on if they're not there. And that's one of the concerns I have. You're just going to make the black boxes a bigger part of your attainment strategy, and that's not the way we should be going.
Well, I worked prior to being a member of Congress. I had a real job, had several real jobs, one of which was in engineering and environmental systems. And one of the estimates here is that EPA's cost-benefit analysis on the ozone proposal caps the cost of unknown controls, again, controls that don't exist, at $15,000. And having worked in environmental systems, designing and building pollution controls that our company did, I can't think of a single thing that we could do for $15,000. So is your experience in implementing unknown controls, does that sound reasonable?
No, it does not.
Thank you. I also want to address something, Dr. Rice, that you brought up about the need to do this to improve health. Would you agree that an individual's health is directly impacted by their economic or income status?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So lost jobs would impact their health?
It certainly could impact someone's health.
I think it would too, particularly when you look at the preponderance of data on who are likely to have asthma. It's males living below the poverty line, unemployed. I want to go back to this other issue, Mr. Easton, with you. I also ran a think tank, and every 4 years we put out a report on environmental indicators for Alabama and the United States. And Alabama has done quite well in improving air quality, particularly in Birmingham, where I live, which was known as the Pittsburgh of the South. We were a steel-making company. In the 60s, you could see the air you were breathing. We've made great progress, despite the fact that the EPA keeps changing the standards. We still meet them. This new standard, though, makes very little sense to me, particularly since the EPA admits the technology doesn't exist. Do you have any knowledge of any unknown controls in use right now in practice, or are they things like, are these unknown controls more in the line of shutting down a power plant or mandatory electric cars? Is that the black box they're talking about?
I would never, ever admit to that as a control strategy, that I'm going to try to shut down some sort of industrial short. Not in my district. Now, it might be in other districts that have no choice, but it certainly wouldn't be a strategy that I would employ. My job is to try to figure out how to make the economics and the balancing of human health work together. So because you can't have, they're not exclusive to each other. You have to have them both in order to find a way to pay.
Even with that, it wouldn't accomplish the objective because so much of the ground level ozone occurs naturally.
Right.
And particularly in the south where you've got a number of warm, windless days and a high density of forest. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you.